Let's rewind to the 1770s, a time when the American colonies were under British rule. Great Britain ruled the 13 American colonies with a firm hand, exerting control over their daily lives and governance. Life wasn't all bad, the colonies were thriving in many ways, but beneath the surface, tensions were brewing, simmering like a pot about to boil over. You see, the colonists were increasingly fed up with British rule. They felt their freedoms were being stifled and their voices ignored. They felt treated like second-class citizens, subject to unfair laws and taxes that seemed to benefit only the British Crown. Imagine being told what to do from thousands of miles away, with no say in the matter. Not cool, right? The frustration was palpable. The British Parliament, meanwhile, saw the colonists as a source of revenue. They believed the colonies should help pay for their own defense and administration. After all, they had just fought the expensive French and Indian War, partly to protect the colonies from French encroachment and Native American attacks. So, they imposed a series of taxes like the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts to fill their coffers and recoup the war expenses. The colonists, however, saw this as a blatant attempt to exploit them. They felt these taxes were unjust and oppressive. They argued for no taxation without representation, demanding a voice in Parliament if they were to be taxed. They wanted their grievances heard and addressed. The situation was a powder keg waiting to explode. Every new tax and regulation added fuel to the fire of discontent. It was only a matter of time before a spark would ignite the flames of rebellion. The colonies were on the brink of a major upheaval, and that spark, my friends, came in the form of tea. Yes, tea. The Boston Tea Party would become a defining moment, a bold statement against British tyranny. Now, the British East India Company was in a bit of a pickle. They were one of the most powerful commercial enterprises of their time, but even giants can stumble. They had a surplus of tea and were struggling financially. Their warehouses were overflowing with unsold tea, and their profits were dwindling. Parliament, in their infinite wisdom, decided to help them out by passing the Tea Act of 1773. This act was supposed to be a lifeline for the struggling company. This act gave the company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies, undercutting local merchants. It allowed them to sell their tea directly to the colonies, bypassing colonial merchants entirely. To add insult to injury, the act still included a tax on tea. This tax was a remnant of the Townshend Acts, which had already stirred up significant resentment among the colonists. The colonists saw right through this. They were not fooled by the seemingly benevolent intentions of the British government. They knew it wasn't about helping the East India Company, it was about asserting control and squeezing more money out of them. The British government was trying to reinforce its authority over the colonies. The Tea Act became a symbol of everything they despised about British rule. It represented the overreach of British power and the exploitation of colonial resources. It was a direct challenge to their principles and their wallets. The colonists valued their economic independence and saw the Tea Act as a direct threat to it. From New York to Charleston, colonists boycotted British tea. They organized themselves and took collective action to resist the imposition. Shipments were turned back, and merchants who dared to sell it faced public outrage. The colonists were united in their opposition. The message was clear: the colonists would not be bullied into submission. They were ready to stand up for their rights and fight against what they saw as unjust laws. Enter the Sons of Liberty, a secret society formed to resist British policies. These weren't your average Tea Party attendees. Led by firebrands like Samuel Adams and Paul Revere, they were masters of propaganda and public demonstrations. They organized protests, published pamphlets, and spread awareness about the injustices inflicted upon the colonies. The Sons of Liberty understood the power of symbolism. They knew that a bold, dramatic act was needed to galvanize public opinion and send a message to the British Crown. And what better way to do that than to target the very commodity that had become the symbol of their oppression: tea. The stage was set for a showdown. The British government, determined to assert its authority, ordered the tea to be landed and the tax to be collected. The colonists, equally determined to resist, prepared for a confrontation. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. The evening of December 16, 1773, was unusually chilly in Boston. A group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded 3 British ships docked in the harbor: the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver. These weren't your typical thieves, however. They weren't there to steal the tea, but to destroy it. With a mix of anger and determination, they hurled 342 chests of tea into the icy waters of Boston Harbor, the air filled with the sounds of splintering wood and the cheers of onlookers. It was a chaotic, symbolic act of defiance against British rule. This wasn't just about tea. It was about freedom, about a people's right to govern themselves. It was a message to King George III and the British Parliament. The colonists would not be ignored, and they would not back down. Section 5. The Aftermath. The Crown Strikes Back. News of the Boston Tea Party spread like wildfire throughout the colonies and across the Atlantic. In London, King George III and his government were furious. They saw the act as an act of open rebellion and vowed to crush the growing resistance. The British response was swift and severe. Parliament passed a series of acts, known as the Coercive Acts, designed to punish Massachusetts and bring the colonists to heel. Boston Harbor was closed, town meetings were restricted, and British troops were sent to occupy the city. These acts, however, backfired spectacularly. Instead of quelling the rebellion, they fueled it. The other colonies, seeing the plight of Massachusetts, rallied to their side. The stage was set for a full-blown revolution. Section 6. The shot heard round the world, the revolution ignites. The simmering tensions finally boiled over on April 19, 1775 at Lexington and Concord. British troops attempting to seize colonial military supplies clashed with colonial militiamen. The shot heard round the world echoed through the Massachusetts countryside, marking the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The colonists, inspired by the ideals of liberty and self-government, took up arms against the most powerful empire on earth. Led by brilliant military minds like George Washington, they fought valiantly for their independence. The path to victory was long and arduous, filled with hardship and sacrifice. But the colonists persevered, driven by the belief that they were fighting for a just cause. And on July 4, 1776, they declared their independence from Great Britain, forever changing the course of history. Section 7. The Legacy of the Boston Tea Party, a symbol of defiance. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just a historical event, it became a powerful symbol of American resistance to tyranny. It showed the world that even ordinary people could make a difference, and that the fight for freedom was worth any sacrifice. The image of colonists dumping tea into Boston Harbor became an iconic representation of American spirit. It inspired countless generations to stand up for their rights and to fight for what they believed in. Even today, the Boston Tea Party serves as a reminder that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. It teaches us that we must never take our freedoms for granted, and that we must always be willing to defend them. Section 8. Reflecting on the Tea Party Lessons in Liberty. The Boston Tea Party offers valuable lessons for us today. It was a pivotal moment in American history, a bold statement against tyranny and oppression. It reminds us that even the most powerful governments are not above the law. The colonists' defiance was a clear message that unjust laws would not be tolerated, and that citizens have a right to hold their leaders accountable. This accountability is a cornerstone of democratic societies, ensuring that power remains in the hands of the people. It teaches us that peaceful protest can be an effective tool for social change. The colonists' actions were a form of civil disobedience that resonated across the world, and that standing up for what's right is always worthwhile. Their unity and determination set a powerful example for future generations. More importantly, the Boston Tea Party reminds us that freedom is not free. The sacrifices made by those early patriots were immense and should never be forgotten. It comes at a cost, often requiring great personal and collective sacrifice, and it requires constant vigilance and engagement to preserve. The fight for liberty is ongoing, and each generation must play its part. It's a legacy that we must honor by cherishing our own freedoms. We must remember the lessons of the past to safeguard our future, and by supporting the fight for liberty around the world, freedom is a universal right, and we must stand in solidarity with those who seek it. So the next time you enjoy a cup of tea, think about the history behind it. Reflect on the courage and conviction of those who made it possible. Take a moment to remember the brave souls who fought for our right to brew it freely. Their actions were not just about tea, but about the fundamental rights and freedoms we hold dear. Their courage and sacrifice paved the way for the freedoms we enjoy today. Let us honor their legacy by continuing to fight for justice and liberty for all. Section 9. Conclusion: the enduring spirit of 1773. The Boston Tea Party may have happened over 2 centuries ago, but its spirit lives on. It's a story of courage, defiance, and the unyielding pursuit of liberty. It's a reminder that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they stand united for a common cause. As we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, let us draw inspiration from the legacy of the Boston Tea Party. Let us remember that the fight for freedom is never truly over, and that each generation must rise to the challenge of defending and expanding the liberties we hold dear. The spirit of 1773, a spirit of courage, determination, and unwavering belief in the power of the people, remains as relevant and inspiring as ever.